Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Just Follow Joy podcast. My name's Ariana Joy. I'm your host, and I'm a human design reader and teacher. And as always, I am so excited you're here. The reason I'm so excited you're here today is we are talking to my amazing friend, Lynnsey Robinson, all about past lives, life selections, soul groups, karmic lessons, and so much more. So Lynnsey's been on the show before. We've been having a lot of repeat offenders recently because I love my guests so much and they have so much to share. We can't get it all done in one episode. But if you don't know who Lynnsey is, she's a certified hypnotherapist and intuitive guide who helps ambitious women all over the world to clear the subconscious limiting beliefs keeping them stuck so they can embody their highest potential and manifest their biggest desires automatically. She's also a super sparkly 6'2" manifesting generator. And I don't know why I never mentioned this before, but we actually have the same incarnation cross. We have, well, it's a slightly different incarnation cross, but it's all of the same sun gates in it, which means that we have the same life purpose, just played out in slightly different ways. But like I said before, we talk about so much in this episode, like how your soul selects this life path and circumstance and family for you, what a soul group is and how to know who's in yours, whether toxic people in your past or in your life right now could be part of your soul group too, whether your pets can be in your soul group, so whether you can have karmic ties to your pets, what our souls do in the in-between between death and rebirth, and some really cool past life stories that Lynnsey has heard from her clients and that she's also experienced in her own life. So with that said, I'm going to stop blabbing and let's go hear from Lynnsey.
Even look half bad today.
What'd you say?
Nothing. So I don't even look half bad today. I thought I.
You look great. Seriously. I look like a toe. A toe with a potato on top of it, because that's what my bun looks like.
A toe potato. A potato.
Potato.
Oh my goodness gracious.
On the same wavelength. Oh my God. All right. We are here with the beautiful and amazing Miss Lynnsey Robinson, and we decided that we're actually going to talk about something completely different than I thought we were going to talk about today, and I'm super stoked about it. We're going to talk about past lives and reincarnation and souls, which I absolutely love. As before we popped on, Lynnsey was like, "Do you want to talk about past lives?" I was like, "Yeah, okay." So
Well, here's the thing that everybody should really know. This is not going to be a normal podcast because you and me are like, we're friends. So this is just you guys get to sit in on a really fun conversation that I'm having with my friend about how awesome our souls are and reincarnation and the agreements that our souls make before we get here and the complicated beauty that is being alive as a human. So that's what we're going to talk about, I guess. We had no idea.
Thank
you. We didn't know what we were going to talk about, but it seemed to just pop up and be perfect, I think.
And yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know anyone who comes onto this podcast expecting any kind of normal episode. But, it's so
if you were hoping for that,
yeah,
keep it moving. No, just kidding.
Ever heard of going to the hardware store for milk? Anywho, all right. So past lives. So Lynnsey, tell me the story that you just told me about this happening on TikTok.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is I had one of those things happen where you put a video on social media and it just goes freaking crazy. And I always kind of thought, as most people do, like, well, that's not going to happen to me, right? Like, I don't put anything out that is like worthy of going viral necessarily, even though I do, but not a lot of people are talking about the stuff I want to talk about. So it was like early January, right in the new year. I was just scrolling on TikTok and this wonderful video popped up of this woman, regular, not a spiritual necessarily. She doesn't have a spiritual profile. Just this creator was talking about watching a movie with her husband about reincarnation. And I think before anyone goes crazy, because they all went crazy on me for not telling them the name of the movie. So I'm going to tell you, it's called Infinite, I believe. And I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. And she was watching this movie and she turned to him and she said, if reincarnation is real, do you think you'd be able to find me again? And he said, well, how do you know I haven't already? And I got really excited because I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, this is exactly what I could talk about this for days. I love this. And so I just stitched her video and I just started talking about soul agreements, and how the people who we feel closest to, not necessarily closest loving wise, it can be, it definitely is that as well, but even the people you feel you have a deep connection with that maybe isn't on the surface very beneficial to you, those negative situations that you might be in with people. But if you feel, if you know, you know what I'm saying, like if you feel that deep soul connection, there's a reason you feel that. And simply that, as all I said, like there's a reason you feel close to these people. Your soul made an agreement to be with them and do this thing called life as a human over and over, to grow and to evolve and to learn and to just experience, and I just let it go. It was a fun video. I didn't think twice about it. I didn't put any effort into it. I just started talking. And then all of a sudden, 200 views, 300 views, 500 views, 2,000 views, all the way. I think it's sitting now at like a million, 1.3 or 1.2 million. I am shook. I am shooken. Long. It took maybe like 3 weeks for it to get that big. I gained like crazy followers of people who want to hear me talk about the stuff that I get the most excited about talking about. And so it was very, very cool. And since then, I've just been answering people's questions about, well, hang on though, what about my cat? What about my, abusive ex? And I think that there is definitely—
What about your cat? I don't understand the question. What do you mean?
People, you would be, I was shocked how many people are so curious about their pets being in a soul contract with them. Is my animal in my soul group? And I never knew that people wondered this. For anyone wondering, how I understand it is pets are like a different energetic signature. They're just a different template. They have their own kind of soul template than humans do. So yes, you can find the same pet over and over in a lifetime, but a soul group is a human, or rather a human spirit soul group, a humanoid, and that's not to say like you can be in a soul group and not be human. You can be in a soul group and be like on another planet, like I've had some clients report. So yeah, I think that you can have those pets that do feel close to you, but I've never seen anybody recognize somebody in their soul group as their cat, because it's just a different, it's a different kind of thing. Sorry to say it, but yeah. And then the next big question was, what about my abusive ex? And I think that one's a heavy question, and a lot of people, I think it's safe to say, aren't in the space to receive the kind of information that I would give them about that. Is it safe? Can I do it here?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, because I was thinking about that, and maybe, okay, and I can be the same way with not realizing that other people haven't learned some of the stuff that I've learned, or even that they're not in the same headspace because they don't work in this industry. They're not spiritual. I'm supposed to call myself spiritual teacher. Gag. That's not true at all.
Stop it. Yes, you are.
Well, no, but like a teacher of this kind of stuff. And that, it's so easy to forget that and not see things through that lens. And when you said, people say, what about my abusive ex? Again, I'm kind of like, what about your abusive ex? Like karmic connections, they don't always feel good. And it doesn't mean that it's necessarily a positive thing. I think a lot of people want to see this in black and white because it makes it a lot easier. And I will say too, like one of the reasons I think this went so viral is, one, you're amazing. People would love to hear from you. And this is really cool stuff. But also you made it really black and white for people. And they love that on TikTok. Like they don't really want nuance.
Yes.
On social media, which is why so much like not super high vibrational stuff can go so viral, because people are like, great, you're making it so simple for me. Well, maybe that's not necessarily the entire story. And when it comes to, I'm sorry, Lynnsey, I'm kind of cutting into your thing here, but when it comes to that, like knowing that those times, just because they're there, it's not something that has like good or bad meaning to it. It's just kind of what we attach to that. And so if this is someone that you went through a cycle with something in a last life or a different time, I've had situations where someone was in my life and we repeated a pattern that I've had someone tell me, like, this, they have done this to you in a past life too. Like, it's time to break this now. Like, you're getting out of this. But that is why he came into your life. Yeah, absolutely.
And
Talk about it.
I'm so glad that you said it first. And I'm also glad that you have your own experience with this, because here's the basic, simplest way I can say it. The only people, or the only beings who will judge something as good or bad or positive or negative is us. Listen, some of my most judged bad situations, some of the situations that I've been in that have been abusive or toxic or traumatic, have been beneficial to me, in some way, shape, or form. I don't know all the rules. I don't know everything, but here's what I know today. Today, I know that if I hadn't gone through what I went through as a kid, as a teenager, some of the worst experiences that I've been through, if I hadn't gone through them, I wouldn't be me. So I choose to take every situation that I'm in and empower myself with the value that it gave me and leave the rest. You know, we have this habit as humans of taking all the toxic stuff with the value, and we lose the value in all the toxicity. You don't have to do that. And at the same time, sometimes we'll go the other way, where we'll throw away the whole experience and say, oh, I'm never getting into the same thing again, which sure, definitely don't. But if you throw away and forget and repress and shove down the entire experience and just close the door on the whole thing, you're losing the value at the same time. So we get to, if we want, leave can I say shit? Leave the shit and bring the gems. And there are always gems. I will die on this hill. Okay. Like, you can't talk to me about trauma and tell me that there's no value in it. Like, I promise you.
Yeah, Lynnsey has not, you guys might not know this about Lynnsey, but she's not had the definition of an easy life from a young age.
And let me be clear, this is not about like, oh, I'm authority on this. But I think if anybody is going to be able to do it, it's going to be me. Like, if anyone's going to be able to pick through the nonsense and the stuff that on the surface was absolutely horrible and still find the reasons why it happened. Okay, the reasons why it happened. Not necessarily I'm happy that it happened. I can always say, I'm not happy that this happened. This was not okay with me, but I accept it, and I'm going to take, because I have that right to take squeeze out every drop of value from that experience that I can. Like, that is my right to do that as somebody who went through these experiences. Now, if you can, to me, that's empowering. To me, that's like, this thing happened to me, but it also happened for me. And I'm going to take every damn bit of value that is in here. And you can't tell me not to. Like, I'm going to. So if we kind of translate that into soul agreements, if we kind of translate that into, what we're talking about in terms of reincarnation and past life, like, what you go through in one lifetime will set you up for the next one. So in your situation where you had the same repeating pattern over and over and over, this was the time where your soul probably said, no, this is the last one. I'm breaking it this time. Because that, for my soul, means that I have become that empowered, more empowered than I was before, to stand on my own 2 feet and say no more. Now, how is that not valuable? Mm-hmm. And anyone who's gotten out of a toxic relationship, how is it not valuable to know that you did that? You were empowered enough to do that. Look what you did. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so, I will never not see it as a beautiful thing. And maybe that's my toxic trait. I'm too like positive about trauma.
Well, it's so funny because you're 6'2" and they're the realistic optimist.
Well, right? There we go.
The optimistic realist. Yeah. I feel like I've told you that about your profile before, right?
You have. Yes. And I love hearing it. I do. I really love hearing everything you know about me based on numbers on my diagram, because I think that it's, who doesn't want to know about themselves? And I think that's another reason why the video did so well, because I'm on there telling you about what you really are, your soul, and these beautiful people that surround you and come with you are closer to you than your family And we can't fathom what that is. Like, think of your closest person in your life, someone you can tell anything to and know that they're going to have your back no matter what. Now, multiply that by 1,000,000, and that's probably how your soul feels about your soul group. Like, it's just something we cannot calculate on a physical 3D, like any kind of scale. Even those people who you feel that connection with, I'm going to use my mother. I'm sorry, Mom, but I'm going to use my mother as an example. And you can fill this blank with a toxic ex or whoever you feel did you dirty in this lifetime. Okay. There are a lot of things that my caregiver, I feel like, could have done differently. Do I believe she's in my soul group? Yes, because usually the parents, if you grew up with your parents, if you were adopted but grew up with your adoptive parents, any kind of caregiver that you grow up with is usually a soul group member. Those close people will stay close to you, even in the 3D human life. Brothers and sisters that you're close with, anyone you are close with is in your close circle. Now, a cousin that you feel close with, but you don't see that often, could be in your soul group, but there's also, like, not to get too complicated, there's like an inner circle, and then there's like an outer circle, and it goes on and on and on. So those in your outer could be like somebody that you do like, an acquaintance or like a work friend or something like that you've seen multiple, like, I think we've had lives before. Maybe you're like, maybe you're in like my outer circle or something, because I feel like we've done stuff like this before, but we're not like we just met. So you have the inner circle and you have the outer circle, and there's the closest relation, those who move you in the big ways, those who shift things in you in a way that only a soul group member can do, can be people who feel painful
or triggering.
Yeah. And I use my example because I will never sit here and be like, yeah, this is true for you, without completely and only talking about myself. And you can take this information and do what you will with it. Take what you want, leave the rest. I am 100% okay with that. But I do understand that in life, you will have people that stretch you and move you and build you in a way that you are now different than before you met them. When I say that, people will be like, oh, so I'm just going to repeat the cycle with this toxic person over and over again, which has happened and come up in the comments as well. So I'm going to address that too. Your soul group is not the people you know. And I know I just said the opposite, but what I'm saying is the soul is not the person. My mother is my mother, who happens to have a soul from someone in my soul group that makes her feel close to me. But once my mother, God, nobody showed this to my mother, please. I don't want to have that conversation, but when she goes back to spirit and I go back to spirit, I will embrace her and remember her as the soul that is in my soul group and love her deeply and remember that love. The human is shed, okay? Like, we talk about this all the time. Like, the human is not the soul. The human helps the soul become what it is. It's a co-creative process. Soul melds with the brain, depending on the brain chemistry, the body chemistry, the build, and the experiences that body has will affect who that person is. But once the body is shed, the soul is the soul. And so my mother's soul at the purest is somebody that I know that my soul loves deeply. And so I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the role that she's playing in my life because I know what it's been able to do for me. And still, at the same time, I know that it has nothing to do with our soul relationship once we go back to spirit. Am I being weird? Does this make sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
You're so weird. I don't know if
You're
don't
so
know
weird,
if this podcast
and it makes sense.
can contain the level of weird you just piled onto it. Yeah, absolutely. And I am someone, it's interesting because my relationship with my mom, like, we are soulmates. Absolutely. In the way that people would think that a positive soulmate relationship would exist. Same thing with my best friend Nico. Same thing with a lot of those people who feel very very important to me in my life. But that's only one way that this can show up, is what we're basically trying to say.
Yes.
And also, it doesn't mean, and I'm sure Lynnsey, you would agree with this, obviously, this doesn't mean that if someone like that treats you badly, or you've been in this pattern before, one, that you're doomed to repeat that forever.
Yeah.
Like this is part of your growth and part of your evolution, and it might not always be fun. Trust me, it's not. But second, like, it doesn't mean that you deserved the bad things they did to
God.
you. Like, let's be very clear. Like, that's not what she's saying. I don't want to put
No.
words in your mouth, but like, I know that's not what you're saying. And I think sometimes this is where people with spirituality can get understandably upset, because if you think that someone is saying like, well, you just got to go with it, like it's your plight in life, that's bullshit, man. Like, we did not get put here with the
No.
option of free will.
Here's the thing, Ariana, guess what? We don't get put anywhere.
Ooh.
We use our own will, and we just do it because we know it's the right thing. Now here's the question. I'm just being so controversial. So here's what I will say before I say anything else.
Yeah.
If you are in a space where this resonates with you, this is for you. If you are in a space where this does not resonate with you, I give you full honor and grace, and I hold space for you as well to be like, you know what, this is not me, this is not my situation, you might want to turn this off now. And again, I'm talking about me. I'm going to talk about my situation based off of what I have learned with life between life and selection of your next life, and how soul groups work and all that stuff, and the work that I've done with my clients as well. When I kind of got on board with the idea that my soul possibly maybe could have chosen this path for me, everything changed. Everything changed for me. I felt in control. I felt empowered. I felt like I had the right to take the value from those experiences because they didn't happen to me. My soul was in the driver's seat of choosing the path that would allow the most soul growth for that lifetime. Does every lifetime look like that? No, it does not. And sometimes the path you choose isn't just about your lessons. Sometimes the path you choose is to help others learn their lessons. And I think that I had a lot of soul growth perhaps happen to me in this life. And B, I feel very strongly that I was able to help those around me learn things that they wouldn't have learned otherwise, learn lessons, learn from their own mistakes. And I don't know how this is sounding, but that is what I believe. Like, as a kid going through what I went through, I really truly feel like my mom learned a lot. She, on a soul level, learned a lot about what not to do maybe, and how to not do certain things a certain way, and not just her, other people in my life, based on my experiences and what I had gone through as a kid. I truly believe in the ripple effect. I believe that you're not just going through it, it's everyone around you that is experiencing and being affected by that contract, that agreement that all the souls make before we get here.
Something that just popped up for me, can we just talk about, regardless of other people, patterns in our lives that might seem hard to break, even if they're habits or issues that developed in this lifetime? Sometimes if you really learn about this stuff,
well, how do you know they developed in this lifetime?
True. We don't know.
We don't know.
If you learn about this thing, you learn about this kind of thing, it can really flip a switch and be like, maybe this is an echo of a time before me time, the me before me. But yeah, do you have anything to say about that? I mean, have you experienced anything with that, or have you noticed any patterns that you think might have come from a past life?
So for me, I have a deep fear that has always been very hard for me to get over. And it is just this looming, not always, but a lot of the time it's looming, this fear of like my kids being taken away from me, not necessarily like snatched, but like early departures where they'll either be orphans or I will like not have them anymore. And it's just like, I can't, like, I cannot handle it. I can't. So when it really gets triggered, I'm just like, I need a minute, because anytime I even see something on TV like that about anything with kids, I just like, ugh. I felt it especially with my second born. Like within days of his birth, I had like a moment where I was just like, felt so sure that he was going to leave me. And I didn't know where it came from. I didn't have like PPD or anything like that. I didn't have any complications, nothing was wrong, right? So I was like, where is this coming from? And it didn't last very long. It lasted very, very short amount of time, but it was so visceral and it was so deep in my bones. I've always felt very connected to my second anyway, very like, I know you. And I feel like I know all my kids, like they're all in my soul group, but this one, I don't know. I still don't know what the connection is really. But I saw a spiritual advisor friend who happens to be a channeler, and she told me like, yeah, you, of course you feel this way because that is a pattern that you've had in past lives. It's not the story in this life, but you remember it, and you are it's kind of like tugging at you a little bit. So something about just learning where it comes from, you know, really helps to release a lot of this stuff. Like I've had clients who are deathly afraid of, gosh, simple things. Like I can't even go in a pool. I'm so afraid of water. And once they learn that, like, for example, one person in a past life regression learned that they perished in their car. They drove their car into a lake. The brakes stopped working, and they drove into a lake, and they couldn't get the doors open. And this was like in the 20s or something, when it was like brand new cars, like were just like they didn't know what to do. So once they learned, oh my gosh, that's where it comes from. Yeah, I let go of that. You know how they say like acknowledging is the first step in any kind of like well, they say that with like addiction or alcoholism, but it's true. Like knowledge is power. Knowing and acknowledging what is actually happening, or, you know, accepting what happened for some people is enough to just be like, yeah, I don't need that anymore. It's good. It's fine.
I have to say that one time I was listening to a podcast episode, and this guy, he was like not a spiritual guy really, but and the girl who had the podcast, I don't know if she is, it was kind of about something else, but he was saying like, yeah, insight's overrated. Like just like acknowledging it, like what is that gonna do? Like you need to take action. And I'm like, where do you think the aligned action comes from, sir? I was like, I've never not identified with something someone has said on a podcast more.
I've never felt so disagreeable. I mean, I think I understand what he's saying. Like, you have to actually do something about it, which of course nobody's saying that you don't have to do something. Like who brought that up anyway? But I kind of think I know what he's trying to say, but it's a weird way to say it. Like, yes, insight is the name of the game. You're absolutely right. Like, where do you think any kind of action or releasing happens if you don't have that? That's step one.
Yeah. Anyway.
Planes are overrated. You gotta just be somewhere. Like, you gotta
planes
get on the
are
plane.
overrated. Teleportation's where it's at.
Yeah, teleportation, guys. Like what?
You know the problem with our society. The problem with our society right now, there is way too much focus on planes and not enough focus on fucking hoverboards and teleportation.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Agree.
So life selection. Let's talk about that.
Life selection. This is so cool. So this comes from research done by Dr. Michael Newton, who is was a hypnotherapist. He's passed. He gets to be choosing his next life now. How ironic. Maybe now. I don't know. He died in like 2001 or something. But he wrote these books called Destiny of Souls and Journey of Souls. He wrote these books he didn't really even need to write them. They're basically a compilation of these transcripts that he, technically did record for his clients going into these hypnotherapy sessions and going through the process right after death. What happens to the soul after that? And if we come back, what does that look like? How do we do that? Like what goes on there? And so he kind of stumbled upon it by accident, and I just reread this story recently, so I'll share it. But he was a staunch, like, I think he called himself an atheist, or at least at best like an agnostic. He was very clinical. He was a psychologist, and he had just learned hypnotism, as part of his practice. But he was just like, yeah, none of that's real. What do you mean? We just blink out of existence. Like, he was very much like nothing happens after death. But by accident, this woman who he had a woman come to him who just felt so alone and so hopeless and just so depressed. And he goes, well, let's try some hypnosis. Let's see what's going on. And without him, he had no idea about this stuff, but she kind of just went to this place where she's in soul form. And she's like, oh my God, those are my people. There are my people. I see my soul group. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, what is going on? And so a couple more times, he kind of didn't let it get to him. He was just like, yeah, whatever. What is this? But then it happened again with another, I think this was a guy this time. And it just by accident, he stumbled into this and he goes, well, let me see what this is about. And so he made an intention to take these clients into the soul form and just ask them like, okay, what happens now? How, and ask them all these kinds of questions. The key to any successful hypnotherapy, by the way, is to ask or past life regression or soul session, whatever, open-ended questions. Because at any point, someone could have accused him of being like, oh, well, you're just leading them. But he's very good about not asking yes or no questions. He asks very open-ended questions so that they get to tell him. And what he discovered was a lot of these clients, almost all of them, said relatively the same thing about certain things. And one of those things was the life selection. So very quickly, you die, you go into soul form, you recognize your soul group. Hey guys, whatever, how you doing? And anybody who's passed already, like let's say your grandparents, if you were really close to your grandmother, she's there to meet you. But even if you haven't, let's say you haven't passed yet, but your grandmother has, you leave a small portion of your soul as like a tether in the spirit world from you to that piece or percentage of soul, so that when your grandma dies, she can go see you and you can actually greet her. Even though you're still here, you're also there. So it's so cool. Isn't that so cool? Anyway, that's just a little side tangent. But so you greet your soul group, you go through your life, the life review that you just lived. You actually, what's interesting about this is that you live through each moment, but in like the blink, time's not real anyway, but you live through everything, not just from your perspective. Let's say you kick dirt in the eyes of a kid when you were a kid. You feel the kicking of the dirt, and you also feel the dirt in your, like you feel every point of view of every way that you've affected the situation in your entire life. That's pretty nuts, huh? Mm-hmm. So you go through all that, and then the judgment part isn't really a thing. The only way you're going to be judged is by your own soul. Your elders, your soul group, your spirit guides are never the ones to be like, you did this bad thing. You feel everything, and you in soul form know exactly what kind of life you've just lived. And so the only one, if there's ever going to be a judgment on like, oh, I could have done this better, or maybe I knocked this one out of the park, like look at me go, like this was great, it's going to be from you. You are the authority. This is your journey. You know what I mean? So anyway, so you go through the life review, and then when you're ready, you learn while you're there. And there's a lot of other things that you can do in the in-between space. Like I asked my channeler friend once, like, what do I do in my in-between? Like before I come back, like what's my task? What do I do? She goes, you actually love to meet people right after they die and escort them like to the spirit. Like, when you see people like, oh my gosh, they're here to take me, whatever. Like that's me. It's so cool. Of course I do that. I would love to do that.
Also, you're really good at tap dancing. You're just tap dancing all the time.
What do you mean tap dancing? I'm confused.
No, I'm just like, you're like, what does my soul like to do in the in-between?
Oh, tap dancing in soul. Yeah.
Every time you go back, you take lessons, you get really good. And the next time
you go, you're to like, tap, girl. Yodeling, you love to yodel.
It's so manifesting generator. You just pick up a new hobby every time you go back. And so when Lynnsey's in soul form, she's learned how to make like the perfect frittata. She can tap dance. She can rap.
That's hilarious. But it's so funny though. Like there are some souls who like to go play on like other planet, like go play on the water planet or the energy planet that we can't see because it's another dimension, or like a fire planet. Like you could do anything. You can do anything. It's so cool. Anyway, so when it's time for you to choose to come back, like you're never like, okay, time to go back, unless you really want to go back. You're like, yeah, I think it's about time I got to learn this lesson. I got to break this cycle. Let's get it over with. Or this is going to be my karma-free life. I'm going to just go and live my best life, and nothing's going to, not a lesson life, this one. So whatever you decide based on what you know your soul needs, that's key. It's always based on what you know your soul needs. And somehow it works perfectly with what this soul in your soul group needs. Or, you guys have like an agreement, like I'm gonna play this role in this time because you played this role last time, so now I'm gonna do this. And fathers can become brothers, and mothers can become fathers, or we kind of rotate these roles, kind of like actors in movies. We just rotate the roles around. So your mom could be your sister once, or your daughter, or your dad, or your brother, or your husband. Not to be weird, but
Well, it all comes out in the wash.
Your parents, yeah. Your parents aren't always your parents because it's the soul. Remember, it's the soul. They just happen to be your parents in this lifetime. So in the soul select or the life selection, from what I understand, from what these books talk about and what my clients have said, again, because I have done a little bit of the in-between life. I mostly do past lives, but it's very congruent with what I've read, which is you see a few choices, right? It's like if you're going to start a video game, like what scene would you like to do the video game in? You pick, for instance, let me just say, what if I'm choosing this life, I'd have a set of 3 different potential families that I could choose from, or maybe 2 different siblings in the same family. Do I want to be this one or this one, right? So you have like a few different selections of circumstances that are ideal for the lesson or for the growth that you need in that lifetime, or that you want in that lifetime. And then you're like, okay, well, this one has a predisposition. This would be me. So I'm going to get personal. This one has a predisposition for all kinds of mental disorders, addiction, you name it. There's some hurdles in this family. So I think I'm going to go with this one. I'm going to go hard mode this time. Let me go expert mode and see if I can overcome this. And I think that might be what happened, because my entire family has issues with depression, anxiety, bipolar, addiction out the wazoo, you name it. I'm not calling anyone out because there's a lot of people that don't have it, but it runs rampant for generations in my family. And I'm free as far as I know, never been diagnosed with anything, and definitely don't have any addictions besides, my video game that I play on my phone.
I was about to say, this is sounding a lot like The Sims, which Lynnsey also really loves playing.
That's okay, but how funny is that? Like, all we ever do is imitate what we know. So if this is true, I think it is, but if this is true, that your soul picks a video game, which family do I want to be in, to learn and to grow and to evolve in a way that I choose in this lifetime? Who am I gonna come into contact? Who is going to come with me and be who I need them to be for my souls, and I will be who they need me to be for their soul. Like, it's all on a soul level. We are not supposed to understand or make sense of it as humans. So if you're listening to this and you're like, this sounds bonkers, it's because we have human brains. But to me, it makes perfect sense. And it really does help me to square away what happened to and for me. It helps me to put it in the category of value for myself. And I think we all have that right to be able to do that. So that's family selection. That's life selection. It's never against your will. If you don't want to come back, you don't. If you say, I will come back, but I'm not coming back with that person or that soul, then you don't. But guess what? You're not going to do that, because the soul is not the person. Again, the soul is not the person. The person has the soul, but the soul is still the soul. Did I answer everything? I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of really cool stuff. Do you mind sharing, if you don't feel comfortable with this, it's totally cool, but do you mind sharing anything from people that you've done past life regressions on? Like, can you share one of the most interesting stories that you've had?
Well, one of the most interesting stories that I have is my own. Can I tell mine?
Yes. I can't believe I haven't asked you that yet.
So here's what is I'll try to be concise. So after I read the book Destiny of Souls, I was obsessed. When I tell you, like, I could not get enough information. I bought every single one of his books. He has a few other ones and a few more that have come out since he died, incidentally. His students keep putting out books about their clients and stuff, and they're all fantastic. But I just could not get enough information. I was looking at everybody who studied this, and Dolores Cannon and all of these people. And I was obsessed with wanting to do, I'm like, I need to do a past life. I want to know about me. Like, that's what everybody wants, right? Like, as soon as you learn about it, you're like, oh my gosh, what about me? I want to learn about me. Of course we do. So after I read the book, I had this, what I know now is an intuitive pull to move to California. I didn't know. I never wanted to move to California. I never wanted to live in California ever. And it didn't make sense, but I was like, I'm going to go there. Sure. And the Newton Institute was in California. So on a trip to scout places to live and like kind of like a reconnaissance trip to go see what California was all about, I booked a past life with one of Michael Newton's students because they were based in California. So I did a past life, and in this life, I had an experience in the 17 or 1800s. I don't know which. It was either the 1800s or the 18th century. Is all I can make it. It was an English-speaking country. I didn't know where. It felt kind of like coastal American. It was by the sea, and my husband in that life was I just heard like merchant sailor. Like he was a merchant. He was gone a lot out on the sea, and we had a lot of money, and our parents put the marriage together. It wasn't a love marriage, but we had respect for each other, and I did feel connected to him. I just didn't, it wasn't a match. It wasn't like a romantic love match. Spoiler, he's in my soul group. I'll tell you who it is. So I'm married to this man, and we have 2 sons that I knew of. I don't know if we had more kids, but I do know of 2 sons that we had, one younger, one older. Now, the younger one I was closest with in that lifetime. We had money, but in that life, I was very aware that I was helpless. Like I didn't have any options. I didn't have any choices. I didn't have any skills, right? Like everyone did everything for me. I didn't even make my own bed. Like we just had people to do that. I do know that our staff was white. I don't know why that's important, but to me it is important. Our staff,
just to make very clear,
it was very like, and this was 2005. I didn't know anything about anything. I was 19 years, well, almost, I think I was 20 years. So all of this information that's coming to me was just like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? Even in the moment, I'm like, what is this? Like, what is happening to me? What am I seeing here? And again, she was asking open questions. I was not being led anywhere. She was asking me, do you get a sense of a year? Do you get a sense of the geography? Who's your family? Do you have any family? What do you look like? Nothing like, are you a female? Are you, nothing like yes or no questions. Yeah. So I knew that all of this information was being accessed from somewhere, and it was not my imagination. And that is a whole other thing, but the imagination is not, we're not able to hallucinate or lie under hypnosis necessarily. So we just get information and we say it. So I'm just telling her all this stuff. I have, 2 sons. I was feeling very helpless and very alone because all I had were my sons, and we would go fishing over by this pond. And I remember thinking as I'm sitting watching them fish and skip stones and have a good old time, that just like, this is great and all, but like, is this it? Is this all I'm going to do? This is it. This is it for my life. Okay. This is it. And then at some point, I'm not aware of a firm timeline, but at some point my husband just doesn't come back. And I know somehow that he died. He either died or he like got a second family. He just never came back. And I felt very sad because now what? I'm still relatively young. I have these sons. And then I fast forwarded to bumping along in a horse carriage on the way to see my youngest, who is now grown and had a daughter, and he named her Annabelle. And so I'm going to visit him in this carriage. And she asked me, how long does it take? No, she didn't even ask me. I just said it takes 2 days by carriage. She wrote all of this down. So sometimes I'll go back and I'll read it and I'll remember, and it just freaks me out every time. But I can feel myself bumping along in this carriage. Like I know I'm in the body, like doing it. And it's so weird. It's so weird. Because I also know I'm in the chair and I'm talking to this person. So you're like you've experienced hypnosis. This is just what it's like. You're in a room talking to a hypnotherapist, and you also know you're somewhere else. It's wild. But past life is a much deeper state than a normal hypnotherapy session. I go visit the daughter, and then we fast forward to my death, which I don't know what happened. I know that there was like a heaviness in my chest. So it was either my heart or my lungs, like I had pneumonia or a heart attack or something, where I was bedridden and I was just like fading, right? And my sons were by my bed, and I still remember like the floral bedspread. It was like yellow flowers, and there was a bright window in the bedroom with the sun streaming in, because it was by the ocean. So I always heard seagulls, like such vivid detail that I'm experiencing. And so when I pass, she asked me like, is there anyone in that life that you recognize in this life? And I was like, yes, my brother was my son, the one that I felt closest with. My close brother was my son. And my husband is my father now. And I was like, and again, this was 2005. I didn't know anything about this stuff really. And so I was just like, how does that work? Like I'd read the books and I knew that it wasn't unheard of, but to me, it was still very interesting. Like my dad, okay, got it, cool. Anyway, so this is where it gets really weird. So I pocket that experience. Very cool. It happened. I still question it because I'd never experienced hypnosis before. And I'm like, is that real? Did that really happen to me? Did I just, make that up? I don't know nothing. 2012 rolls around and I'm already established in California. I'm thinking about I have my son. I'm married. I'm thinking about doing hypnotherapy and I'm talking to my dad about it. And I'm asking him like, yeah, hypnosis is great. Like I didn't tell him that I wanted to do past lives because he just would have thought that was very weird probably, or like, why, but I told him, I was like, I told him the clinical stuff. Like you can get rid of habits, you can get over fears, you can, do all kinds of stuff. And I go, are you afraid of anything? And he's like, no, I don't have any fears. Maybe you could help me quit smoking though. I was like, yeah, that'd be fine. And then we start talking about something else. And all of a sudden he goes, you know what? I do have a fear. And I was like, what? I've always been weirdly afraid of like the deep ocean. Don't remember nothing. I don't remember anything about my past life. I haven't gone back and reread it. This was just a conversation that I had. And my brother had a baby 6 months after I had my son. So we both had babies. He had a daughter and he named her Annabelle. Again, none of this is clicking in my head because I haven't gone back. And then one day I was like, I'm going to be starting hypnotherapy. I think I'm actually going to do it. I remember I had a past life regression. Let me go I'm going to go relive that. And I went through so many emotions reading this because my dad, I had a feeling as my husband died at sea. And I never would have told him this. Never. It's not a conversation that, hey, by the way, did you were married in a past life? Like, I just don't want to have that conversation. I still have never told him this. But the fact that that was a fear that he had clicked with me the second I went back and read these notes. And you know what else clicked with me that almost made me pee my pants? Was the fact that my brother had a daughter. He was my son and he had a daughter and he named her Annabelle. And when I read through that name, she circled it at the time because it was a specific name, very specific name. I call him immediately after I read this and I'm like, why did you name your daughter Annabelle? Like, it's so accusatory. Mm-hmm. And he goes, I don't know. What do you mean? I go, why? No, why did you, but I need to know why you named her Annabelle. And he's like, I don't know. I just liked it. I've always liked the name. I always knew that I was going to name my daughter Annabelle. It was never going to be anything else. I said, but did your wife give her? Like, come on. I needed to. He's like, no, I had to actually convince her to name her. She didn't like it at first. And if I was ever a skeptic, if I ever had any question, it was immediately gone because the past life regression I had, I only told my friends about. I didn't feel comfortable at that moment as a 20-year-old talking to my brother and my dad that they were in my soul group. It just wasn't that kind of dynamic. And now once I freaked out on my brother in 2012, 8 years later, almost 7 years, I finally have told him, like, here's why I freaked out at you, by the way. And he's just like, oh, that's weird. That's interesting. And he was just like, that's cool. I'm like, no, I understand. Like, you picked the same name twice. Like, you don't see how weird that name is. It's a beautiful name, but it's a vintage name.
Yeah.
Like, why? For me, that's what kind of clinched it. That's still to this day, to me, is one of the coolest stories that I have about a past life because it was mine. Mm-hmm. And because the way that it confirmed itself was just really, really bizarre to me. And no, my dad still doesn't know that he was my husband in past life. So if nobody could tell him, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Really? But it's so cool.
Cool. I think it's very cool, but I just know he'd have like so many questions. Like, he is on board with reincarnation. He totally believes in it. He thinks he was at Jesus's crucifixion, which is fun. And he also says, like, I'm never coming back. This is my last one for sure. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, if it's your last one, you don't have to come back. Fair enough. But that's your human talking. That's like saying I'm never going to drink again while you're drunk. Once you're sober and someone wants to go out, you have a different state of mind. And as a soul, and yes, it's leagues different because the soul form is different than human form. But if your soul is saying, I'm never doing this again, or if your human is saying, I'm never doing this again, yeah, you can say that. Don't be surprised if your soul has better ideas, because your soul always has better ideas. So that's my story. But if anyone has a cool, can I put this out there? If anyone has a cool like past life story, can you like share it on TikTok or Instagram, or just email me or message me on Instagram? Because I am obsessed with I just love hearing about it, and I would love to hear about this. Everybody's stories.
Yeah, absolutely. No, gosh, Lindsay would love to hear that. I would love to hear them.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lindsay, so if you want to do a past life regression too, I know the perfect person that you can work with to do that, and her name is Lynnsey Robinson. Um, and also, if you have any other thing that you'd like to work on through hypnosis, I also know another wonderful person named Lynnsey Robinson who can help with that. So, Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything. It was so nice to see you. I haven't seen you in so long.
I know. We need to hang out virtually very, very soon. But thank you for having me. Everybody, thank you for indulging me. If you've stayed on this long, I appreciate you. I just think at the end of the day, if you're here on earth today, listening to this, but even if you're not, like even if you're just alive today, you're not a rookie. This is one of the hardest things to go through. Like this lifetime, come on. Think of everything that's happened in this lifetime besides 9/11, besides technology boom, internet, besides the social justices that are happening, like freaking pandemics. Come on. This is not your first rodeo. You did not do this lightly. You are here for a reason, and I honor every one of you because we're in expert mode right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You rock. Everyone listening, you rock. And I will see you next time.